Okay, welcome back. This is Dwayne Madsen with the Dwayne Madsen Report, this Sunday Roundup, and we're coming to you live tonight from Washington, D.C. And before we go to our guest, let's play this clip. This is from Sky News, the reporter in Tripoli who's reporting on how people are still celebrating victories by the Gaddafi forces against the rebels. It almost sounds like some sort of scene from Star Wars or something. But anyway, let's go to this clip.
Well, Paula, I just want to give you a quick sense of the streets here in Tripoli this morning. We're right in the centre, in the heart of Tripoli. You can see that people are driving around the streets where we are. They're waving the green flags of Colonel Gaddafi. They're tapping their horns. It's been like this for a few hours now. Well, there you go. You heard it live from that man on the street there shouting, "We support Muammar Gaddafi." The situation is, though, that overnight we've had 4 hours of very heavy, very intensive gunfire. We heard machine gun fire at one point. There was small arms fire as well. We think the small arms was from people out and about on the streets. The authorities here saying celebrating victories which they've been told the regime here has achieved in other cities across this country. Here you go, there's a spontaneous reaction to those announcements on Libyan state television. The claims that other cities like Misrata and Ras Lanuf have been reclaimed by government forces. Lisa Hollis.
Well, there you have it. And we see the other scenes from to the east of Libya where the rebels are claiming that they're advancing. So it's hard to figure out what's going on over there. But I hope my guest, Don DeBar, who was with the group that we were all on that went to Tripoli in October of 2009, maybe we can figure out what in the world is going on over there. Don, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. How you doing?
Good, good. Now, we were over in Tripoli. We even were in Gaddafi's tent where we were subjected to, I think it was well over an hour. I had trouble keeping my eyes open, but we were in the front row, so I didn't want to fall asleep, especially since he had those two, shall we say, less than comical looking security guards on both sides of him. Looked like they both were packing something under their jackets, which I would not want to encounter at the other end. But what do you make of the situation over there? And do you think that we're getting, at least from the U.S. media, you think we're getting a good picture as to what's going on?
No, not at all. I mean, the coverage, first of all, the thing that's been remarkable up until the last day or two, since the whether you want to term it a revolution or an invasion, as at least one report that I saw in the Pakistani Observer termed it, where they said they were actually troops on the ground, like on the 23rd and 24th. However you term it, the situation, the media situation reminds me remarkably of the lead up to the invasion in Iraq in terms of the unanimity of opinion as to what facts exist without any actual documentation of them. You've had all kinds of claims that are made, and then they just sort of dissolve. That 1,000 people were killed here, and for instance, here's a big one that he was bombing civilians. This is like a week and a half ago, even, and reports from Russia Today, for example. Of a statement coming out of the Kremlin where the Russians say our satellite surveillance has shown no aerial activity over Libya. That stuff doesn't make it out. And from the left to the right, everyone has this same narrative. And, if you remember the Iraq War, the reasons for going to war was Saddam Hussein is a tyrant that's demonstrated a complete disregard for human life. That's what's being ascribed to Gaddafi right now. The people of Iraq are oppressed, and the world has a duty to help them. That's what's being presented now, that the people are up in arms against them. That's what the narrative says. That the oil reserves are necessary to the world economy. Of course, that's a big thing here in Libya. And that by removing Saddam Hussein, the future of the world will be safer from terrorist attacks. And, of course, there's a whole history of different terrorist attacks being ascribed to Gaddafi, where, under closer examination, of course, they weren't. It wasn't him.
Right, and isn't it amazing? We know that Richard Pearl actually was hired by Gaddafi's government to burnish his image here in Washington, yet we hear other neocons just itching to get Gaddafi because, they're hearkening back to the old situation in the 80s where Gaddafi was public enemy number one. Everybody loved to hate Gaddafi, and McCain was on one of the talking head shows today saying, well, Gaddafi's insane. Of course, this is McCain saying someone's insane, which is kind of rich in itself.
Well, insanity, I guess, distinguishable from Alzheimer's.
Right. Of course, he likened Gaddafi to Hitler. Now, where have we heard that before?
Right. That was also.
That was the
Saddam Hussein, right?
Right. I think what we have at play here, there probably was some sort of spontaneous uprising in Libya because we know that there's a lot of cross traffic there between there and Tunisia. Cairo's too far away, so maybe that didn't have too much of an impact. But I think what we're seeing here is the Obama administration. That now there's reports that they may be waffling a little bit because of the oil situation. And I think it gets right back to the common denominator in all these things. Now, we were there. We saw that construction that was going on. The Koreans were in there, the South Koreans, the Italians, the Chinese, doing all this massive they were building a new conference center, a new international airport. So I think there's a lot of people are looking at the situation and looking at their investments and saying, "Ooh, this is hurting us in the wallet." And it was amazing that after people started talking about no-fly zones and maybe putting troops in there, it seems like Gaddafi that all of a sudden went on the offensive. That all of a sudden he had people on his side where he may not have had many before, but maybe it's a deal where, look, he may be a dictator, but he's our dictator, and we're going to rally around him.
Well, you also have, from the point of view of a Libyan, you have the example of the experience of the people of Afghanistan and Iraq to point to as the result of American military involvement. Anyone, as you'll recall, when we were in Tripoli, the standard of living was actually quite high. I mean, Libya is a third world country, ostensibly, but the people there get a monthly check from the oil reserve, from the oil revenues from the state. It's treated not just nominally, but in fact as a public resource. And some of the money, I don't know what percentage it is, but people there, I was told, get a monthly stipend of between $2,000 and $3,000. Now, given the housing is heavily subsidized, the health care and education are free, and as you'll recall, buying food on the street, the food is cheap. People are doing quite well there.
As we remember, even the cigarettes are cheap.
That's right.
We can't say the same thing about the booze because it wasn't available. At least we didn't know where to get it.
That's right. That's right. Apparently, there is an underground for alcohol, but it's the population is largely Muslim, and that's I guess something that goes along with countries where you have a large Muslim population. Alcohol is frowned upon.
Right. Absolutely. And but getting into the sort of the profile of Gaddafi, certainly he has been a colorful figure for what now over 4 decades. He was pushing this green book. It was the 40th anniversary of the revolution. The conference was called the Conference on Green Book Supporters. Of course, I don't know how many people there were actually supporting the Green Book, but I do remember his portrait was everywhere. It sort of reminded me of what you might see in Pyongyang, where the dear leader Kim Jong-il is peering down at you at every vantage point.
It's funny because for me, I kind of got the same eerie feeling I used to have going to the post office and looking at Ronald Reagan looking down on there. But one of the things that I learned while we were in Tripoli, I learned actually from Bob Petrakis, the journalist from Ohio that was part of our group also. And that was after reading the Green Book. I hadn't looked at it in this context, but he said essentially if you looked at it, it is, and didn't put Gaddafi on it, and didn't tie it into Libya, that you would think you were reading a new left tome from the mid-'60s in terms of what the type of government structures or lack of structures that it espoused, and the sort of socialist, almost like anarcho-socialist economic philosophy that it had.
Right. If you combine the Green Book with Mao's Red Book, you would have some sort of like a Christmas novel, you know, with the colors and everything. But anyway, no, it was. Yeah, go ahead.
The other interesting thing was when we went, which was October of 2009, if memory serves.
Right.
At the same time that was going on, I live in Westchester County, New York, and there was a huge controversy in the local press over Gaddafi had wanted in late September, early October to visit the United Nations. He did visit the United Nations, and he was looking for a place to set up a tent. And, you know, I had no idea until we visited the compound what they meant by tent. This is something
that was a nice tent.
Yeah, like they have weddings in, like an upscale wedding. You know, it's very, very air conditioned and all of that.
Chandeliers and carpet.
There was a town in New Jersey that wouldn't allow it, and then Bedford Hills, New York, they wouldn't allow it. And there was huge, I'd say somewhat manufactured, but a huge public issue over whether or not Gaddafi would be allowed to stay in these towns around New York.
Don, hold that thought. We've got a break, and we'll come right back with Gaddafi and the pitching of the tent in New York and Jersey right after this short break.
Attention RBN listeners, the Freeze Dry Guy, providing the finest in long-term storage food since 1970. Today, the U.S. military and the U.S. submarine service enjoy using these products extensively. In actual scientific tests, these foods typically maintain their high nutritional value in excess of 30 years. These foods are delicious tasting, hearty, light to carry, and easy to prepare under the most adverse conditions. Unfortunately, many people building a family food storage program, as well as many companies providing emergency feeding programs, simply do not give you enough protein, especially animal protein. No other food satisfies like animal protein during stressful times. If you're a meat eater, you will definitely want our freeze-dried meats and entrees, but we do offer vegetarian items as well. Visit freezedryguide.com or call 866-404-FOOD, 866-404-3663. Freeze Dry Guy, the best you can buy.
Do you need help getting your child to behave? I'm behavioral therapist James Lehman, and I'm willing to give away thousands of my best-selling total transformation programs for free. All you do is tell us how the program works for you and your family. Did it turn around your child's behavior? Did the screaming and arguing stop in your home? Is he doing better in school? The total transformation has helped hundreds of thousands of families. I want to see what it can do for you, and I'm willing to let you have it for free. Just order my program, use it with your child, then send me your feedback. I'll refund the purchase price of the program. You keep the Total Transformation Program forever, for free. You don't have to struggle with your child's bad behavior one more day, because now you can try my Total Transformation, and the program will be free.
Limited number of free programs available. Call now. 1-800-583-1093. 1-800-583-1093. That's 1-800-583-1093.
In times like these, you can't depend on the government to keep you warm and fed, but you can depend on the Vermont Bun Baker to do just that. With the Vermont Bun Baker, you'll never be in a situation where you can't cook, bake, fry, boil water, or heat your home, all at the same time. One of the most revolutionary cook stoves, wood stoves ever, the Vermont Bun Baker is available with or without soapstone veneer, a natural stone that retains heat and radiates it back into the room once the fire is out. A beautiful addition to your home. The Vermont Bun Baker has an efficiency rating well above 75% and qualifies for the wood stove tax credit. For more information, watch the Vermont Bun Baker on YouTube and live stream or visit us at www.vermontwoodstove.com. You can also reach us by calling 1-866-SOAPSTONE. Don't ever be hungry or cold because the power's gone out. With a Vermont Bun Baker, all you have to worry about is What's for Dinner.
Okay, welcome back. This is Wayne Madsen with the Wayne Madsen Report, the Sunday Roundup, and I'm joined tonight by Don DeBar, and we're talking about our visit to Tripoli, Libya in October of 2009, and even being in Gaddafi's tent. And we're trying to wade through what probably is, there's a lot of propaganda. Wouldn't you agree, Don? I mean, one thing that I've found very intriguing is the old Libyan flag, the pre-Gaddafi flag. This goes back to King Idris. Right. Now I can understand maybe somebody had one in a cedar chest for 42 years. But it would probably be a little bit worn, but these are brand new. So where are they getting these? They're all over the place, and I do believe in what we saw in, especially in Egypt, probably somewhat in Tunisia, that the U.S. is involved in some of these things through the National Endowment for Democracy, the Soros NGOs. But I think that where they may think that they're in control of these revolts, these are not Serbia, these are not Georgia, this isn't Ukraine, this isn't some of the other places where they've conducted these themed revolutions. I think they may have bitten off more than they can chew. What are your thoughts on that?
Could well be that. Just watching the coverage, first of all, the flags caught my attention also. Where did they come from is my, first thought. And also, when you were first watching the video that came from Benghazi and other places as video started to come out, I was struck by the fact I do video. I've been doing that for like 35 years. And, I was struck by the fact that you had an awful lot of shooting footage of what was supposedly massive rallies that showed like 15 or 20 people really close to the camera. Right. And not much else. And, you contrast that to Tahrir Square in Egypt, where you had a shot from above that showed like masses of people. And the other thing, I don't know how many people are familiar with the movie The Blair Witch Project. My wife and I, and it's essentially supposedly, it's a pseudo documentary. These people go out to shoot a movie, and it's supposed to be about this legendary witch, and they supposedly stumble on the actual witch, and people supposedly die and all this. Most of the movie is shots of the ground. I mean, in terms of the runtime, if it runs 90 minutes, maybe like 65, 70 minutes of it are shots of the ground, people's feet running, and stuff like that, and you never really see the witch.
Although we may have seen her more recently with Michelle Bachmann. No, it's true. These are very. I've noticed some of these, and you can go on YouTube and see it's a group called Save Libya that's putting some of these out, and they're very. Yeah, you're right. They're very tight shots. You don't see a lot of people. You see maybe 6 people in the back waving like a brand new, recently unfolded old Libyan flag. Right.
I saw a video supposedly of a bombing, an aerial bombing of a rebel position or of a civilian position. I forget how it was characterized. But in this aerial bombing video, there was no airplane and no bomb. There were maybe a dozen people scattered within the view of the camera, and maybe 100, 200 feet away, a bonfire, a fire. They don't show any missile debris or anything. I mean, there's no evidence of the claim other than something on fire in the background that there, A, is an aerial bombing that took place, and B, that there's any people there other than maybe a dozen people that went out with the camera crew.
Right, and there was an interesting report on Al Jazeera today that we had reports of refugees streaming into Tunisia across the Libyan border, and today they're saying that it's very eerie because there's not many people coming out of Libya now.
I know, it's amazing. They were saying 150,000. They said 150,000 people like 4 or 5 days ago, and today I heard several thousand, unless they've all been absorbed somewhere.
Right. Well, I mean. I think what we see is obviously Gaddafi's doing his propaganda thing, but I'm afraid that, with Hillary this past week talking about how the State Department has to compete with Russia Today and Al Jazeera, and she mentioned a Chinese news network. That what we're seeing play out here is a information war that we're probably not getting, except from tidbits from Al Jazeera here and there, and Russia Today. I don't think we're getting the full picture as to what's going on inside Libya.
I would say just Russia Today. I mean, Al Jazeera is based in Qatar, and Qatar is not in the same political situation that Libya is in, and Qatar is more in the political situation that, say, Saudi Arabia is in. Where they're, maybe it's not expressed because, you get your hands chopped off or whatever horrible things happen in Saudi Arabia, for example. But there is a huge dichotomy, a political contradiction between the people of those countries and the leadership. And there's also a huge, in most of them, economic contradiction as well. And although, you have, again, the great leader or whatever Gaddafi is, termed or perceived as in the country, his situation in relation to what goes on in Libya is quite different from that of the Qatar government. And so, except for today, I saw the first acknowledgement in Al Jazeera of there being some popular support in Libya for Gaddafi. And it's only because circumstances forced it.
Hold on, Don. We have another break, and we'll come right back after this short break. This is Wayne Madsen from Washington.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
Are skyrocketing prescription costs draining your budget? If you don't have insurance or are taking medication not covered by insurance, the Powerhouse Savings Card can lower your prescription costs by up to 50%. Now you and your family can save 20 to 50% on all prescriptions. It's accepted by most pharmacies and mail-order pharmacies nationwide. No prescription card is easier to use. Just show your card and save 20 to 50% right on the spot. There are no monthly fees, just a one-time processing fee of only $4.95 for you and your immediate family. Stop paying full price for prescriptions. Stop going without the medication you need because it costs too much. Now your family can get the prescriptions they need at a cost you can afford. Call 1-800-963-0232 now and start saving money with the Powerhouse Savings Card. Call 1-800-963-0232. 1-800-963-0232. 1-800-963-0232.
The Grainmaker Grain Mill. Handmade goodness since 1999. Handcrafted stainless steel and high-quality alloys. There has not been a finer grain mill made right here in the great state of Montana. Hand-operated, the grain mill does it all. Wheat, corn, peanut butter, rye, rice, coffee, beans, flaxseed, all grain types. Make your own gluten-free flour. Experience the satisfaction of providing wholesome, nutritious foods for your family without additives or preservatives. Each mill is handcrafted with manufacturer's lifetime warranty. To order your grain mill, call us at 1-800-724-2719 or go to our online store, republicbroadcasting.org. Take a look at why this grain mill will be passed down through generation.
Are you still paying your credit cards and so-called bank loans thinking that you owe the money? Do you feel like it's your moral obligation but can't see an end in sight? Well, what if I told you that in truth, you don't owe a single penny and that the banks know this and hope you don't find out? Here's where we come in. Free2Prosper.com specializes in a profound debt repudiation method which challenges the validity of your so-called debts, morally frees you from the burdens, and protects your property. Our system is often superior to settlement, bankruptcy, or consolidation, which often leave you in a worse situation. If you feel the moral obligation to take care of yourself and your family, then I urge you to consider taking action right now. The economy will not wait. If you want to know more so you can prosper through the economic collapse, all while staying honorable and true to yourself, then call 877-417-8393. That's 877-417-8393. Or visit freetoprosper.com right now.
Okay, welcome back. This is Wayne Madsen with the Wayne Madsen Report, this Sunday Roundup, and we're joined tonight by Don DeBar, and we're talking about our trip to Tripoli, Libya in October '09, where we were at the anniversary of the Libyan Revolution and the Green Book conference, and we had although we didn't have a chance to meet Gaddafi, we were probably as close to him as many people will ever get. I just wanted to mention also his son, Saif Gaddafi, who's been all over the television. He was sort of a social gadfly in Europe, counted amongst his friends Prince Andrew, Lord Mandelson, the former British business secretary, and Nathaniel Rothschild. So unlike Saddam Hussein's two sons, who were real, SOBs, Saif Gaddafi really ingratiated himself to what you would, I guess you'd call the elite of Europe. And I wonder if that's has any effect on sort of Europe has made noise, but they haven't really talked. I think there's a split. Talk is cheap. And then there's Gaddafi's relationship with Berlusconi, which is another issue. Berlusconi's thought to have a lot of financial interests in Libya, and Gaddafi has interests in Italy. And there was even a report, and I don't know how true this is, but that Gaddafi may have even been in Berlusconi's estate and may have witnessed at least one of the Bunga parties. But be that as it may, I think we're dealing with a different kind of dictator in Gaddafi than we did with Saddam Hussein, and even with McCain calling him, likening him to Hitler. I don't think that's playing as well as it did with Saddam. What are your thoughts on just especially his son seems to have a lot of business contacts and social contacts in Europe?
Well, yeah, I mean, his son basically has a reputation that, I don't know, would be sort of like what we would have seen in college with a rich kid, So,
yeah.
He a playboy, a jet setter, whatever. Right. And although no accusations that I'm aware of him indulging in a way that Berlusconi does with the very young. But, in terms of a relationship with Italy, for example, generally, we didn't get to sample it, or at least I didn't, but my understanding is that some of the best Italian food in the world is in Libya, and it goes back to the relationship between the two that goes back to the Roman Empire. I mean, when we were in our hotel in Tripoli, I was told that we were about 300 miles from Sicily across the Mediterranean. It's very close.
Right, I remember we would have done anything to get a ferry ride over there to have some of that Chianti.
Right. I remember that. That's right. Yeah, but the ties are historically have been very strong. There's a little Italy somewhere in Tripoli, I'm told, also, and in some other cities too. But the more important geopolitical aspect to it, and this may explain the maybe ambivalent positions being taken by various members of the EU, is that a large part of European oil, particularly in southern Europe, comes from Libya. And those are direct relationships right now. And there is a concern, I think a valid one, that a change in the leadership there under conditions like this, where you're essentially looking at the United States having a role, or perhaps a major role, in what comes next. The relationship to that oil will change in some people's minds, I think, with the U.S. as an intermediary. And this is a classic power play, basically, in geopolitical terms, at least in the eyes of some people in Europe. And I think that explains some of the ambivalence among people who actually make policy.
Right. I think it's a fact that any time the U.S. gets involved in especially a Muslim country, we're radioactive. And people remember the no-fly zone, the 10-year no-fly zone imposed on Iraq, which Absolutely. Had disastrous consequences for that country. It resulted in a lot of deaths even before we went in there and started shooting people up in the occupation. And, I think just the mere idea that the U.S. boots on the ground, of course, they're not going to like that. And I would say that would drive people who might be on the fence right now, seeing which way the wind's blowing, might say, well, we'll just stick with Gaddafi and see how this thing plays out.
I agree with that. There's another aspect to it, too. On the one hand, there's the image of Gaddafi as, a maniac or, whatever, loose cannon. And that's, fairly pervasive, particularly in this country. That's on the one hand. But on the other hand, this is a fact. Gaddafi is the only human being that has ever had fighter jets sent out to kill him individually. And he survived that.
Right. And we remember his daughter. His daughter was killed in one of those U.S. attacks. Right.
That's right. And some 15 other people too.
And the other thing, we're hearing they're talking about the Arab League might do something. Well, the Arab League is in turmoil right now, but they don't even have a military infrastructure. And then they talk about the African Union. Well, Gaddafi's gone out and said that he's the king of all African kings, and he's given a lot of money to some of those African countries. Some of them are dictatorships, of course. So, this is his natural base of support in Africa, because he likens himself more as an African than he even does, in some respects, an Arab.
Yes, and that's another point of contradiction too, because for a very long time, and even continuing through this, by the way, Gaddafi has done an awful lot to further various movements, anti-dictator movements even in Africa, particularly South Africa. He was largely responsible. Nelson Mandela has expressed that he has a huge debt to Gaddafi because of the role that Gaddafi played during the period of apartheid in South Africa. And so, but another contradiction that goes on there is that despite all of this, and despite the program that was underway, building the largest airport in Africa, development of an African economy, these are things that Gaddafi stated he wanted to start using their oil revenues for, and made some material moves. On the other hand, they started doing joint maneuvers with AFRICOM.
Absolutely, and let's face it, they were also part of the CIA's rendition and torture program, just like Egypt was. Libya was a major center for that activity, and his director of intelligence, his name is Musa Kusa. He's his right-hand man and was as much involved with the CIA as Omar Suleiman was as the head of the Egyptian intelligence service.
Which is, and it's a lesson there, by the way, for some of the people in these countries that think if they play ball with the United States, then their position will be safe. Like Saddam Hussein believed, for example.
Right. Or Mubarak.
Right. Mubarak too. But these were people that were on the other side of the fence and were swung, were seduced into these relationships, including military and quasi-military, paramilitary, whatever you want to refer to those rendition relationships as, intelligence level relationships. They don't save them, because once these people get a foothold somewhere, they need to eat the entire loaf. And, right. If you're on, laying on top of the loaf, you're food too.
Absolutely. And it was interesting to hear Gaddafi talk about how he's under assault from Al-Qaeda, that these people are all Al-Qaeda. It almost sounds like he could be a general in the Pentagon making the same statements.
Or Bush, yep.
Right, with the Bush administration, everything is Al-Qaeda. This guy, apparently Richard Pearl did more than burnish his image over here. He must have convinced them that the Al-Qaeda boogeyman is a good way to go when you're in trouble. We see that with Yemen today. This guy Saleh, that regime is talking about how they're under assault from Al-Qaeda, and apparently they're reporting that Al-Qaeda blew up a bomb today and killed 4 people over there. So, and the Saudis are they're always talking about, and Mubarak referenced Al-Qaeda in his final hours. So it looks like Al-Qaeda is the gift that keeps on giving for a lot of these U.S. supported dictators, especially in that area. But Let's go to the phones. We have Byron. Byron called in the last segment from Canada about Libya. So let's bring Byron on. Byron,
hey, sorry for calling back, but there was a statement that some lady called you about the sex trade over in Saudi Arabia, and why I imagine it does happen. Israel is the number one country in the Middle East that has the largest sex trade of any country over there. The other thing is, before Americans start trying to criticize, and they love running down Muslim countries, and there's no doubt in my mind that the Saudis, there's a lot of corrupt princesses and princes over there. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But before the Americans want to start criticizing any Muslim country about sex trades and drugs and everything else, they need to clean their own damn backyard up. Last week, there was a report that 300,000 children, boys and girls, I think 13 years and younger, around Washington, D.C., was involved in different types of sex shenanigans going on, mainly by the politicians and the very wealthy.
Right. So, I was going to say, that's probably the congressional pages you're talking about.
Yeah, well, all I'm trying to say, for that lady that she thinks she's going to make a point by trying to criticize the Saudis, and there's no doubt there's probably something going on, she needs to look in her own damn backyard instead of worrying about other countries. And I just want to say one other thing. The Libyan people, if any American steps on that soil in Libya, and if they can catch them, they ought to hang them by the neck and gut them. After what they'd done to Iraq that was becoming a first world nation, they performed a second heart transplant in the world. And as you said about their education, health care, and everything else in Libya, or in Iraq, sorry, for the United States to go in there and destroy that country, literally, not only killing the men, the professionals, the educated over there, but the destruction of the land with the depleted uranium and everything else that they've dumped in that land. United States, if there's a country that I think needs to be taken to task, United States is right at the top of the list for what they've been doing in these third world countries and around the world for the last 150 years. I apologize for saying that. But it's
no.
American people.
I think we're in agreement with that. If you look at our history, Don, I mean, it's not just North Africa. Everywhere we've supported some of the worst vile dictators in the world, especially in Latin America.
Well, why are you looking at supporting in the third world? Look who we're getting to run our own, like the people that we got running this country. Look what they've done to it.
Absolutely.
Why are you talking about supporting other people? Look what the hell United States is. 42 million people on food stamps, 50 million without any health care. What the hell, what kind of politicians and leaders have we got in the United States here, for God's sakes?
Right,
anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Well, I think, Don, one thing we didn't touch on is how even some of the independent media that used to report this has been sort of taken over. I know you've had some experience with that in New York, and we had Hillary complaining about news coverage. But what are your thoughts on just the fact that this, the last week we heard more about Charlie Sheen and what was going on in Libya?
Yeah, absolutely true. Just to go to the sex trade thing for 1 second, I live in New York, and in New York City, periodically there are raids both of Russian women who were impressed into coming to the United States and working as prostitutes, and Chinese and Korean women also, all the time. So, I mean, and there's more money here available for that, and it's much more above board than it is likely. I mean, I don't know from personal experience, but likely more than it is in, for example, Saudi Arabia. But more to the question of what Hillary had to say about the media here, and you're right. Charlie Sheen was number one topic on an awful lot of the news programs over the last couple of weeks. In the Middle East, the listening audience, viewing audience, news sources, Al Jazeera is about 53% of it. That's a 2008 poll I'm looking at. And Al Arabiya, about 9%. And those are the two largest mainstream Arab networks. And then the U.S. has one, Al Hura, which is totally a U.S. intel op.
Yeah, sure.
And And so, that's, a good chunk between Al Jazeera and Al Arabiya is 60-some-odd% of the population. And like I said, Al Jazeera is particularly visible on Libya. But in general, it's Qatar's perspective. And Al Arabiya is Saudi Arabia's perspective. That's where this, the money comes from to finance these places. Now, Saudi Arabia, of course, is completely and totally aligned with the United States. And, in terms of, dealing with, for example, both Gaddafi and go back to Saddam Hussein. Both of those countries, Libya and Iraq, had very large public sectors, and you'd term it mixed economies with a large socialist, quote unquote, aspect to it. And, that's not exactly where the people that rule Saudi Arabia live in their minds. And it is certainly not a model that they want to see flourish in the Middle East, because an awful lot of the existing paradigm would collapse if that were a successful model there. I think that's why you see people like Chavez and Fidel Castro speaking out maybe a little louder than they would otherwise. And the other thing I wanted to raise, I'm sorry to run on like this.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
The really interesting thing is Hillary Clinton's silence over what took place in Honduras and their culpability over what took place in Haiti with Aristide. And, compare and contrast to the role that they're playing now in Libya and the role that she played in Iraq and is playing in Afghanistan.
Oh, right. And there was the aborted coup against Rafael Correa in Ecuador, which she had nothing to say about, really. And I think when we look at the animated tree, John Kerry, weighing in. I mean, when you go back to the 1980s, and our last guest was at the U.S. consulate in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and was forced to give visas to these Saudis who he knew they were coming over here for no good. But this gets back to the whole BCCI, Iran-Contra deal. Kerry was oversight on that. Clinton, when he was governor of Arkansas, allowed all kinds of shenanigans to go on. These people are so intelled up with CIA connections. You can't really believe anything they say because they've got their own agenda.
Right, and their agenda is oil.
Absolutely, and we will be right back after this short break.
Hey, honey, I'm home. I grabbed a newspaper on the way home. Look at all the news today.
Don't you know that all you're going to get in the newspaper is propaganda, twisted news, and false information?
Honey, this is a national newspaper. It has to be true.
Ha! For some reason, the majority of the population believe anything the mainstream media tells them. The newspaper doesn't give out the important attention of what's happening to this country and news that affects our daily lives. Say, does that newspaper mention anything about the North American Union?
No, not that I can see.
I didn't think so. You need to go to www.newswithviews.com, where truth is more important than political correctness. That's www.newswithviews.com. Hey, don't throw that away. We can use that in the birdcage.
Okay, move over. Let me start reading newswithviews.com.
The truth? Read all about it at newswithviews.com. Newswithviews.com, where reality shatters illusion.
Warning for all Gulf Coast disaster survivors. Be aware that dangerous gases are in the air you breathe. Benzene, hydrogen sulfide, methylene chloride, and Corexit 9500. Keep your body clean with microplant powder. For all Gulf Coast residents and all who want to be healthy, HempUSA.org brings you a new formulation of microplant powder with Lactobacillus acidophilus, rebuilding your immune system while detoxing the rest of your body, pulling out positive toxins, heavy metals,
viruses, fungus, bacteria, and parasites. Cleans and purifies the blood, lungs, stomach, and colon. Microplant powder will help eliminate these dangerous chemicals from the body used in the Gulf cleanup. At hempusa.org, we want you to try our #1 selling detox product, Microplant Powder. Call and order at 1-908-691-2608, 1-908-691-2608, or visit us at hempusa.org today.
Heart-related health problems affect millions of people each year. Maybe you're one of the many who suffer from issues related to angina pain, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, unbalanced cholesterol, irregular heartbeat, or clogged arteries. There is a solution that doesn't involve expensive prescription drugs that only mask the problem and leave you with horrible side effects. Doctors who have tried Heart and Body Extract with their patients are thrilled with the results as well. Here's what Dr. Goodman has to say about his experience with the product.
If you notice that most times you hear these drug ads on TV, they have a list of possible side effects. I find that if you're going to take something that is you're trading one problem for 5 or 6 other problems, that to me doesn't make sense. Using something that is natural, that is absorbed into the body, particularly because it's in a liquid form, I think is the best way to go.
Call to order your 2-month supply of Heart and Body Extract today. Call 1-866-295-5305 or go to hbextract.com.
Okay, welcome back. This is Wayne Madsen with the Wayne Madsen Report, the Sunday Roundup, and I'm joined tonight by Don DeBar. We're talking about our trip to Libya. And Don, I didn't want to end the program without talking about another event we went to last year in New York, where we were in a dinner with none other than Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the Iranian president, and there, of course, was the Green the Green Revolution there, which had U.S. fingerprints all over it. I think, again, we saw the fact that the U.S. was so much involved. We heard Hillary at every turn. She's always bringing up Iran in respect to what's happening in the Arab world, as if maybe she doesn't realize that Iran is not an Arab country. It's a whole different kettle of fish there. But what are your thoughts on what Ahmadinejad had to say and the fact that the U.S. is still trying to foment a revolt there, when in fact we may not like their form of democracy, but it is a democracy. They do have elections.
That's right. As a matter of fact, I had done some work analyzing the election that was supposedly contested and found out that their elections are a hell of a lot more secure than ours are.
They don't use the Diebold. They don't use the Diebold machines, I take it.
Not only that, it's very complex, but the short story is that they have very small election districts and 13 people in each one that verify the information, which gets sent up and then is published, so that it is impossible really to rig an election there without it being obvious to everyone, because each district is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I bet they don't have the graveyard vote like they did in Chicago a few weeks ago with the Rahm Emanuel election.
Or like they have historically in Brooklyn. But on your question, Iranian politics are somewhat complex because you have the parallel religious structure that's almost like the old Communist Party outside the Soviet government. And Ahmadinejad as he's more or less a secularist. He was when he was mayor of Tehran, for example. He allowed speakeasies to stay open and all of that. But he's constrained and also has the political reality of there being, a lot of support for the religious aspect in his country. Nevertheless, based on that, there's an antagonism with Libya, a natural one, because it's a secular state. Nevertheless, I think he's made huge errors in judgment, attacking the Libyan government and siding with the rebels there, just in terms of geopolitical strategy. And I mean, he's basically, allowing two countries that are facing exactly the same enemy at exactly the same time, and very similar tactics being applied to both. And he's cannibalizing the guy standing next to him instead of standing with them and, attempting to try to face the people that are causing the problems for both.
Absolutely. And I think one of the problems we see with the State Department and the media is they have all these experts on. Many of them are neocons, veterans of the Bush administration, but they're all talking in terms of Libya and Iran and the other countries. It's all about how this is going to affect Israel. Well, it will, because the Palestinians are waking up too and realizing with the release of those papers by Al Jazeera that they've been sold out by their own leadership as well. And that's definitely going to have an impact in Gaza and on the West Bank.
I mean, ever since oil was discovered there, you have had a historical legacy of comprador governments. And
yes.
And the worst of the bunch presently is the Palestinian Authority. I mean, just look at the condition of the Palestinian people and the relationship between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli government.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. That'll do it for tonight. And thanks for joining us, Don DeBar, calling from New York. We've been talking about Libya and earlier about Saudi Arabia, and we will be back this time next week with another.
Wayne, thank you very much.
Wayne Madsen Reports Sunday Roundup, and thanks, Don, and that'll do it for tonight.
Look forward to having a cocktail sometime.
Absolutely.